Yes. One of the things that we look at in another group that I'm on is called the social determinants of healthcare. And I'm sure you can talk about that in length. But one of the things that can come up there is that sometimes just your geography can have an effect on your emotional and mental health. Just where you live, your zip code alone, without you even realizing it, you could have been born there, living there your whole life, and not realizing the effect that this is having on you.
Absolutely.
And sometimes that's hard for people to understand. I was talking to a gentleman who was not Black. He said, tell me more about that. I've never thought about the social determinants of health and emotional care, and that your zip code could have an effect on how you live. So I try to explain to him, social and cultural and historical issues where people live, and you can map it and you can see that certain illnesses and certain diseases, whether it's mental or physical or emotional, appear in clusters in certain parts of the country or in certain parts of the world, for instance, even if you talk about places where there have been war and genocide and stuff like that. And those things, even though they might not have happened to the physical harm, right, might not have happened to you, just living in that community has an effect on you because you're living around the people who have lived through that, and you're still going through that. And some of them might have been related to you. Could be your father or your mother or your sister. Or you might have seen lots of harm in your community. You may still be whole, but you might have seen lots of people die or lots of people get sick or whatever it is, and it has an effect on you. And for him, that was like eye-opening. He was like, I never thought about it like that. And the thing is, he has had the privilege of not having to think about it like that.
Exactly. I think that's so important to name that there are some people they have the privilege of not even thinking about it when we think about this every day without knowing that we're thinking about it every day. Black people are 20% more likely to experience psychological trauma and psychological challenges than other communities. Why? It's because exactly environments, historical trauma, again, intergenerational trauma, again, vicarious trauma. And what you're speaking to is that environment, watching and hearing gunshots and people dying. Like, I remember one time me and my cousins and another friend were out in Brooklyn and just walking, and she casually mentioned she saw somebody get shot here in middle school. And I turned to her and was like, are you serious? Like, and she was like, yeah. And it was very much a casual, normalized conversation. And there, it dawned on me that that's trauma. And I'm curious as to how that showed up in a middle schooler navigating and going to school and working and doing all the things. But because life had to move on, I didn't have time to process that vicarious trauma or that trauma, that traumatic experience. And so how often are many of us hearing about the news, hearing on the news, seeing things in the environment, hearing things outside where it may have not happened directly to us, but because I'm in that vicinity or because it's an earshot, I still go through some traumatic physical experiences, even mental and emotional, for sure.
Yeah, it can be significant. As you said that, the picture came to my mind that she experienced that and immediately have to figure out, how am I going to survive?
Yes.
And she developed, and you can tell me, I'm not a therapist, you can tell me. So in my mind, she developed an automatic system that says, I have to deal with this, I have to keep going on, I have to survive. Whether she dealt with it or not, she developed a coping mechanism since that day until the time she spoke to you of how she's dealt with it, even though she may not have even expressed how she's dealt with it.
Exactly. And because she made a joke, and I love us because we'll use humor to kind of cope through things. But she was like, yeah, I still had to go to school because the trauma on the other end was getting in trouble for not making it to school by my mom. It's like, I understand that. But like, both things can be true, right? How do we understand like that's a traumatic experience? And yes, you had to get to school, and at the same time, that's something that a middle schooler should be processing.
Right. Well, and even more than that, a middle schooler should not be experiencing.
Yes, that
In the perfect environment, right? That should not be something at that age that a child is having to deal with and develop a coping mechanism.
Right.